I completed 5 trilogies this year. I also technically started 2 other ones, but I haven't read the third book on either of them yet. I won't speak on them. Just in case you're curious, those two are Silo by Hugh Howey. I've read the first two, but not the third one. And likewise on the Broken Blade trilogy by Mike Orland, which I read in November and soft DNF'd. I think I will go back to it though. If you're curious as to why, I did speak about that specific series in my November reading wrap up video. I will be speaking about these trilogies in no particular order, except I will be talking about my favourite one first. Now, I am very stingy when it comes to giving out 5 stars. They basically have to completely overtake my life, consume my every thought, become me for me to give out that 5 stars. So I only gave out 2 5 stars in 2025, and both of those were part of the Poppy War trilogy by R.F. Kuang. Now, the books I gave 5 stars were the first one and the second one. The third one, I think I gave 4.75, so it wasn't bad. It just wasn't as good to me as the first two were. A very brief summary of these books. We have Rin, who is a teenage girl who lives in a small village. She is tasked with running the family shop and looking after her younger relative. Her aunt, I think it is, decides that she should be sold off into marriage. Classic. And Rin is not up for this. She decides that she's going to pour her everything, studying for, I believe, 2 years to absolutely ace this test, which will grant her a scholarship to a university. The only way you can get into this university is by acing this test. It's her only option. She does not want to lead the life that has been laid out in front of her. Now, I will say that Rin is not a likable person. She is very flawed and very selfish. And I love that. I love reading about flawed characters and reading them and almost judging them. There were several times in this where I was like, Rin, what are you doing? Where she does crazy things, she takes crazy leaps of faith, she makes wild assumptions about people. But I was absolutely enthralled in her journey and enthralled in the world, for she discovers this thing called shamanism. So there is a little bit of fantasy elements. It is not just a historical novel, there's definitely fantasy elements. And I absolutely loved it. I can't wait to reread it again next year once I have read a bit more about the history of China. I would like to develop my context so that I pick up even more from it on a second read through. If you have not heard of the books of these, you may have heard of it because it was adapted into a Sky TV show. I read the A Discovery of Witches trilogy this year. Now, I read the first book when I was about 15 years old, and I really enjoyed it. I don't really know why I didn't read the rest. I can't tell you. So I did it this year. Now, I will say that the main thing I love about this trilogy is how realistic of a portrayal it is for a relationship between a witch and a vampire. The witch, Diana, is about 30 years old, and Matthew, the vampire, is several centuries old. For this reason, I absolutely love that his family is a patriarchy. He has rules and expectations of her that come across as controlling in our modern society, but is very much of the time that he would have been around in. I love that that's just, it's so realistic. The characters are slightly older as well, so we don't have to deal with very petty behavior. Not that there's anything wrong with being petty as a teenager, it's just really nice to read about actual adults doing things. I think I gave this trilogy an average of 4 stars. There is a very big setting change in the second book, which was interesting, and I absolutely loved some of the imagery in the third book. I can't tell you about it because it will be a spoiler. If you haven't heard about this trilogy, it's essentially a witch and a vampire are falling in love, but there's also this document called the Ashmole 782. I don't quote me on the number. And Diana manages to withdraw it and discover it when it hasn't been seen in centuries. Suddenly, all of the vampires, demons, and witches are very involved and want to get their hands on that document. Everyone believes it contains information to the origins of their species. This is a very mixed trilogy because it's got all the fantastical elements of witches and demons and vampires, but it also contains a lot of science and studying and history. So if you like academic books or you like books, it's not heavily academic, but it is set in academia. then I would maybe give this a go. If you need like a slightly more adult paranormal romance vibe, these books might be for you. I've been trying to read a little bit more sci-fi this year because I'm very much a fantasy girl. And I know I like sci-fi, I just haven't explored it as much as maybe I should have done. So the next two books I'm going to talk about are sci-fi based. We have the Red Rising trilogy and we have Brandon Sanderson's The Reckoners trilogy. I'm going to talk about the Brandon Sanderson one first, and then we'll move on to Red Rising. The Reckoners is about this accident that happens, and suddenly a lot of people are developing superpowers, and normally it makes them a bit of an asshole. Why that is the case, we don't know. Are only assholes getting superpowers? Is something happening that makes them become an asshole? I don't know. Well, I do know because I've read it, but I'm not going to tell you. So once you've got all of these epics flying about, doing their mischief, controlling cities, there is this band of people called the Reckoners who are trying to take down or even kill these epics that are wreaking mayhem for all of the normal people. This trilogy was probably my least favourite out of the five I'm talking about today, but it's not because it was a bad trilogy, I'm just clearly not the target audience for it. This is, in Brandon Sanderson's own words, a young adult trilogy, and I think this feels very targeted towards teen boys. Obviously, teen girls can read it, grown women can read it, grown men can read it. Who cares? I'm a grown woman and I read this trilogy. But it definitely feels. There are some. There are some young adult books that they feel like you can read them at any age. This feels like it's written for young adults. My favourite book in the trilogy was the second one, though. I think I gave it 4 stars because I really loved the setting that it was in. It was a city that was underwater and there was glowing spray paint, and it was just such a beautiful image, boats everywhere. I did really like that. No one can say that Brandon Sanderson isn't good with world building. Now, Red Rising was my second favourite trilogy of the year. I loved the first book, I loved the second book, and I liked the third book. It's the typical, the third book had more politics, it had more standard battles. I like the skirmishes, I like the world building. As a result of trying to fit in more politics and the more boring elements of a story for me personally, the more interesting stuff tends to get dropped, and you have to be really invested in the characters and the story to care to the same degree as you did with the first books. I did not think that the third book was bad. I gave it 4 stars or 4.25, I can't remember which, but my favourite two were the first two. A very, very brief summary for those of you who have been living under a rock. Red Rising is about Darrow, who is a Red, and he's essentially a slave. He finds this out. He believed he was living a noble mission to save humanity by mining away in Mars to try and make the surface of Mars livable for humankind. He's just a slave. Humankind has been living on Mars for ages. It's essentially a story of him trying to become the top-ranking kind of human, or a gold, which I tend to think of like muscly giga chads. I don't know, that's just what it makes me think of. So he basically tries to become one of those with the intention of bringing everything down from the top. And the last trilogy that I'm going to talk about is the famous romantasy trilogy, The Poison Healer by Lynette Noni. Now, this trilogy, I don't think it was anything especially magnificent when it comes to romantasy, but it's definitely an enjoyable trilogy. I rarely think that books get better the further on they go, but with this trilogy, I think they did. I actually liked the characters more and more, and I found the first book a little bit bland, which is a shame because setting a romance in a prison tends to be the thing for me. I like quirky environments, and that's pretty quirky. I also like this more recent trend of having the female leads in a slightly more caring position, like a healer. I say that, but I also love when they're assassins. Maybe I'm just easy to please. But also, I only gave out 2 5 stars this year, so maybe I'm not easy to please. I'm just here and I'm just reading. Yes, so this trilogy is about a healer who has lived in a prison for most of her life. Stuff happens. There's a guy. And I think that's why I can't say that it's nothing more than just sort of generic-ish romantasy. Again, it's good, it's enjoyable. I think the best book, I can't remember which one it wasn't this one, whether it was the second or third one, I think I gave it 4 stars. but I can't remember much about it. I can remember little bits of the other two books, but I don't want to say anything because it is spoilery. But I think that just goes to show it hasn't made a super impact on me. It was enjoyable. They were a fun time. Do I think I'll ever read them again? I doubt it, but I'm not getting rid of them. I might read them again. Now I have finished speaking on the 5 that I have fully completed in 2025. I'm kind of surprised because I didn't have any trilogies already started. I didn't bring any trilogies into 2025 with me. All of these were ones that I started and completed within 2025. I'm just wondering how many I'll read this year because it wasn't my intention to necessarily read series. I do think I've been leaning a little bit more towards standalone books recently, but I'm trying to get back into reading series. If there are any good fantasy sci-fi series that you would recommend, please let me know. I'm always looking for more books. Not that I should be because I have quite a lot on my TBR section of my bookcase now. I am officially on a book ban again. I do read quite quickly, but I think I can last a good few months. Well, I can last book-wise. Whether I can last due to my mental fortitude, I'm not sure. Thank you for watching, and let me know if you have read and enjoyed any of these trilogies too.